then, of course, what he also had were these really, actually they were pretty awful fakes. So let's swap them around. Let's have a look at these others. Now, these are quite dinky, aren't they?
Yes, pretty little things.
But what's the background to these?
Well, they, I think, have come down on my father's side through my great-grandfather, who was a silversmith.
It was a sort of good news, bad news approach to the whole thing. Start off with the good news, feeling nice and happy, and then ease him into the fact that the others were not right. The maker's mark, see it just there?
Yes.
Paul de Lamery.
Paul de Lamery? Agreed.
However, I have to say, I don't think Paul de Lamery would recognise those.
Oh.
Because I don't think for one moment that he made them.
Oh. Well, how's he get his stamp on it, then?
Well, this is where, say, they really are, to my mind, they're rather naughty.
Oh, are they?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it makes them much more interesting, then.
Well, yes, it also makes them highly illegal.
That's seriously bad news. The laws protecting UK silver are very strict. Every piece has to be correctly hallmarked before it can be put on the market. If the marks are faked or inaccurate, the item cannot legally be sold.
That's why grandfather took them home. In other words,
I think you've got it.
He might have...
He realised they were wrong.
Yes, and he thought...
And, of course, quite rightly didn't want to sell them.
No.
In fact, if he had sold them at that time and put his name on, he would have been then in line for 14 years in prison. It's come down a bit now.
Have to serve it now.
I think it's only about 10 years. I think he was on such a high from the earlier source boats. He reacted, I thought, very well indeed.
A lot of people, of course, come along to the Antiques Roadshow with great expectations. I always think that's the phrase that describes them best. They think that something they own is very valuable, and that is, alas, not always the case.
As a nice, decorative 19th century copy, it's still worth about £300 to £400.
Oh, that, my wife will be very disappointed.
I'm sure she will.
I would think now probably in the region of about £5,000.
Oh, is that all?
A fascinating Flemish picture, and one which, taking everything into account, the value that I would put on it would be round about £2,000.
No.
That sort of thing.
No, I thought
but does that disappoint you?
That does, actually. I thought it'd be a bit more than that, yeah.
I remember one particular picture. It was a flower picture, and the expert was David Mason.
A beautifully signed down here, Martin from Holland, dated 1802.
When people come along with great expectations and you have to let them down, you've got to do it with a certain amount of style and care.
Well, my granddad purchased it. He was a man of means, you know, he had quite a collection of antiques and things. He did used to purchase this sort of thing. It wouldn't surprise me to say that it would be worth some money.
This man came along to the show believing that he had an extremely valuable picture, but all was not quite as it appeared.
One looks at a picture like that and you can see the brush marks, the brush strokes on it. And of course, because of that, you tend to think that it is definitely an oil painting worth £4,000 or £5,000 or something like that. Sadly, I have to tell you that it is actually a reproduction.
And he explained very, very carefully to the owner why the picture that he thought was so valuable was not.
But what happens is that the print is laid on top of a canvas, is pressed down very firmly, and then a varnish is applied to the picture. And then with a brush, the strokes are made in the varnish and not actually in the paint. So that a lot of people, they look at them and they are convinced that they're oil paintings.
No one likes receiving bad news, and the reactions of the owners of these items, it's fascinating to me to watch, because you're actually seeing their dreams being destroyed.
Bearing in mind that it is a reproduction and not an original painting, it would have a value of only a decorative value of approximately £20 to £30.
Oh, got it. That's all I can say.
It is, of course, always disappointing when you have to give people bad news, and we certainly don't like doing it. But I remember one lady in Exeter was so disgruntled by the information she'd just been given that she reacted in a most extraordinary way.
Which brings me to this picture, brought in, wrapped in a rather grubby dustbin liner earlier today by a woman
we took it over to Peter Nahum, who made the point that unfortunately it wasn't an original work of art, but a print. However, he said it was still very decorative. She was not convinced because a little while after she left the hall, a local policewoman came in with the picture, which she discovered wrapped up again in the old bin liner, thrown away contemptuously in a hedge behind the hall. I don't think it's really as bad as that, do you?
Something similar happened recently when I was at Lincoln Cathedral. A painting was found abandoned after the owners, having queued for hours, were told it was just a copy. But my prize for the longest face at an Antiques Roadshow must go to the poor man who came to the show at Mount Stewart in Northern Ireland. Tim Wonnacott had to break the bad news.
Did you have to pay a lot then?
Well, I paid at £52 in old currency.
What, in the 1950s?
Yes.
52 old pounds?
Yes.
Gosh, that was a price. If you were selling it at auction in a marine sale, I think you could get between £200 and £300 for it.
That's all?
Yeah, that's all.
My goodness. After all those years, and keeping anything myself for 50 years,
I know.
And I can only get £400.
Well, £400 top end, I reckon.
I never heard the like.
Oh dear, as Hugh so eloquently put it, shattered dreams. And before we go, a memorable encounter for Hilary Kay at a roadshow in Bexhill-on-Sea. A visitor with an unusual item had a bit of a surprise up his sleeve.
So, Rockola, Chicago company, 1960s jukebox. Are you a passionate jukebox man?
Jukebox and rock and roll, yes.
I'd never have guessed.
The owner of the Rockola, he was just great. First of all, just to look at him, you knew that he had rock and roll coursing through his veins.
This particular model we used to have in the 60s in the coffee bars in Tunbridge Wells where I used to live.
So it takes you...
that's why I got it as nostalgia more than anything.
So it takes you right back?
Right back.
And we were standing there chatting and we sort of went through the standard questions and told him what he wanted to know.
I would have thought today we're talking about £2,000, £2,500. And I think we ought to just let it play out. When what else could it play us out on except...
J9.
J9.
And then we ended up playing Summertime Blues, which, you know, you had to where we were. And I was standing there minding my own business. He said, "Do you jive?"
That's all right. Can you jive?
I can. And I thought, oh, OK, then, you know, we might as well. It's the end of the day. And so we did a jive, which was terrific.
No dash, we got a word to leave.
I'm still waiting for my invitation for Strictly. I think perhaps on the basis of that, I'm at the bottom of the list.
I thought you were pretty nifty on your feet there, Hilary. In fact, the story I've heard about that occasion was that Hilary was actually nursing a very painful ankle at the time. She certainly paid for her enthusiasm. It was 3 weeks before she could walk properly again. Well, that's all we've got time for now. Join us next time when we'll be unpacking more treasures on Priceless Antiques Roadshow.
And Fiona Bruce highlights the past 30 years of the popular series Priceless Antiques Roadshow on this BBC DVD. Treasures from the 17th century next here on BBC Two, David Dimbleby's 7 Ages of Britain in a moment.